Değerli izleyenler, Ege Economic Forum konferansının 3. gününe hoş
Dear
geldiniz.
participants, welcome to the third day of Aegean Economic Forum. Today is the 83rd anniversary of the death of the great leader Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the founder of the Republic of Turkey. Atatürk's struggle for his country in his 57-year life, what he brought to our nation, and what he wanted to gain, November 10th is of great importance for our country and the nations of the world to understand this correctly. With the honor of what he has given us, our country, our great leader, who is loved and respected not only by the Turkish nation, but also by the nations of the world, on the anniversary of the day he was sent off to the immortality, we commemorate him with endless respect, gratitude, and great longing. Dear participants who are watching and listening to us in front of their screens, we are gathered together in Aegean Economic Forum thanks to the support of Aegean Economic Development Foundation and Özgencil Group Corporation, Izmir Metropolitan Municipality, and under the partnership of Izmir Chamber of Commerce, Aegean Exporters Association, İzdoğa, and again with the support of Izmir Industrialists and Businessmen Association, Izmir Commodity Exchange, Aegean Industrialists and Businessmen Association. This session will be held under the sponsorship of the Union of Chambers of Tradesmen and Craftsmen of Izmir, Mentaj, Aegean Region Chamber of Industry, Aegean Young Businessmen Association, and with the main sponsorship of ILO, with the support of Zorlu Holding, and again, thanks to the sponsorship of the Dünya newspaper live broadcast. Our sessions will be held today again with the simultaneous translation, and who would like to listen to our broadcast entirely in English can switch to the YouTube channel of the Aegean Economic Forum. As we leave behind the first 2 days of our conference sessions, which are planned to last for 5 days, I'd like to share today's program with you. We're going to have a new title called How Will the World Transformed by Agriculture 12,000 years ago be fed? We're going to have this session, and at 3 p.m. we will be with you with a session titled From Neolithic Age to New Generation Agricultural Systems. And you can access the program details of today and the next days on our website and follow us on social media links. So the first session of Aegean Economic Forum 2021 conference will be How will the world transformed by agriculture 12,000 years ago be fed? I'd like to invite Işın Kestel, the chairman of the board of directors of Izmir Commodity Exchange, and I'll give the floor to her. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ebru, distinguished panelists, and distinguished participants. I would like to greet you with all my esteem. Before I start my words, I would like to commemorate the 83rd year of our founder, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, for his passing on this day. And as it is Izmir Commercial Bar, we are going to be talking about a very important and very meaningful, subject today. And we're going to be talking about what will feed a world transformed with agriculture 12,000 years ago. The agricultural sector is now getting a little bit more obvious for many parties, and I'm very happy about this because agriculture has become a very important subject for all around the globe, so that the people can get the necessary food it needs. The production and also the supply to be restructured is very much necessary and is a basic policy for all of the countries around the globe. Agriculture, which is the most important field, is definitely a very significant area, but there are 3 different articles which we have to be tackling upon. the population is rising, and according to that, of course, the necessity to reach to food is rising as well. And only 1,900,000,000 was the population in the past, but now we are reaching up to more than 8 billion people. So 1920, since 1920 to today, of course, we're expecting a 25% more of a necessity to reach to food. And of course, there are different types of studies that are ongoing until 2050. We did figure out that the need for food is going to increase by 59% to 98%. So this is a very important area where we necessitate to work on. So in order to reach to secure and safe goods, of course, we need to work. But on the other side of the globe, there are unfair distribution of food. 811 million people are struggling with starving, and due to pandemic last year, hunger and also starving, of course, has become quite prominent. 30%, which is more than 2.3 billion people, are malnourished. And those who, more than half of the malnourished people is in Asia, more than 1/3 is in Africa, and a little less is in Latin America and in the Caribbean. Unfortunately, starving and also malnutrition is very close to economies, and that is quite obvious due to pandemic, and we clearly see it right away. And the price in the world of food is increasing, which is actually really creating a difficulty to reach to food in the areas and the geographies that I was talking about. The ecologic balance is disrupting, which is actually threatening the future. And in the last 60 years, in Europe, there is a 26, and also in the Northern America, there is a certain amount of 20% where agriculture is realizing. But that is not sufficient, because in the last years, the trend is going forward as for the population. And due to wrong irrigation and the soil treatment, unfortunately, is creating a great problem. And also, when we take a look to the last 100 years, the clear water utilization is also another problem right now. And in the last years, the clean water, the actually accession to clean water accession is rising each and every day. And 69% of the consumption of clean water is made in agriculture. This is also something that we need to understand. In the lesser developed country, it can reach up to 95%. And due to the water utilization in agriculture, unfortunately, it can create a great amount of a disruption, and also affects the environment, which creates an alarm signal around the world. And more than 1 billion of animal diversity is actually right now in the verge of extinction due to the unplanned utilization of water. And due to the fact of these population and the needs of the people, and due to construction and utilization of agricultural lands, unfortunately, the biodiversity is decreasing. In the next 10 years, we believe that this way of acting will threaten us all. Of course, the agricultural aspects are creating a greenhouse emission as well. And on the other hand, agriculture has also been affected by climate change irreversibly. And 24% of 24% of all these causes are due to deforestation and agriculture. So we need to take steps forward for that. And climate change is creating also an atmospherical change. And that is the reason why on the long term, it create the change of production designs. And in the agricultural areas, there would be an instability and there will be a fluctuation in the prices. And on the other hand, there will be certain policies to be developed accordingly to that. Distinguished participants and friends, the world is facing certain threats, and that is the reason why we need to review the agricultural and food aspects in that manner. So for that, and all the production processes, and particularly after the year 2000, because of this really craziness of consumption, we cannot go on further like this for the future. That is actually affecting our whole structure, both social and economically. It wasn't 12,000 years ago, today and tomorrow. These lands can feed all the population, but of course, we shouldn't threaten nature with the ways we are acting. So that is the reason why we need to take milestones. There are milestones right now taken for a green future now as the main theme of the Aegean Economic Forum. So I suppose that this will really elevate the awareness of this issue. And I would like to thank the AEF and also the Özgence group and all the people who have paid efforts for the organization of this meeting. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you very much, Ms. Ishinsu, for your contribution. And by the way, we are also the sponsor of the main theme, what will feed our world transformed with agriculture 12,000 years ago. And that is the reason why I also would like to thank Christophe Pelletier as well, and Ms. Neptun Soya, Ms. Birol Celep, and Ms. Birol Celep, and Ms. Güveneken, and also Mr. Ali Ekber Yıldırım for their contribution. Thank you very much, Ms. Castelli, for your contribution. And now I would like to give the floor to Christophe Pelletier. Mr. Pelletier is a futurist and a strategist. And he has written 2 books, as the author of 2 books about these issues of agriculture.
And there's also, he has in his book, Next Agricultural Revolution, which means future harvest, Next Agricultural Revolution in Turkish, and published in 2010, he explores whether and how future food production can meet demand in the 2050 horizon. In his book, We Will Reap What We Sow, which includes reflections on human nature, leadership, and feeding the growing population, was published in 2012. And it is said that leadership can change consumer behavior, production, and supply systems for better or worse. He's looking into how it might affect them. Pelletier, who advises the organizations, he consults on strategic foresights and future scenarios, and he will be with us today. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Pelletier to the broadcast and leave the floor to him. The floor is yours, sir.
Good morning. My name is Christophe Pelletier. So I've been working as an independent futurist and strategist about food and agriculture for 12.5 years. Before that, I worked for a Dutch agribusiness company, Nutreco, and I filled many positions, technical, scientific. I did quality assurance, planning, logistics, sales and marketing, and senior executive. So in my international career, I've conducted business with farmers, food processors, wholesalers, retailers, and food service companies in many countries over 4 continents. So tonight, I will quickly tell you what changes I see coming and what is needed to adapt to a different future. We've gone a long way since the beginning of agriculture. For centuries, agriculture worked in local and closed systems at the level of a region. with the development of industrialization, we started to open the looks, and not just in agriculture. We actually created two problems, not just one. On the one hand, we have depleted natural resources, and on the other hand, we have created piles of waste. So we went from a circular to a linear system. And to make it worse, we never looked at the long-term effects and the cost of this linear system. We never included these externalities in the production costs. So waste became an accepted part of consumption society, and we waste lots. In the case of agriculture, the number that comes back regularly is that 30 to 40% of the food produced never gets eaten. And the issue of food waste is twofold. In developed countries, it is a behavioral and organizational problem at consumer, retailer, and restaurant level. In developing countries, the main cause is post-harvest. Either it's rotting on the field or because of the poor storage and logistics. It is an infrastructure and a money problem. Regardless of the causes, food waste is not just about food. It's about all the water, the energy, the money, and the land used to produce, transport, process, and sell it. For consumers, it's about throwing away a third of their food budget. For a household spending, let's say 12% of its budget on food, it means that they voluntarily throw 4% of their budget in the garbage bin. That's rather silly, isn't it? The total price tag of the wasted food alone amounts to about $1 million worldwide. But beyond the money, let's just think a little bit about what a third means. A third of the world arable land is about 10 million square kilometers. This is 60% of the size of Russia. It's the area of Canada or the Sahara. It's slightly bigger than the US, China, or Brazil. It's 2.5 times the size of the EU, and it's 3 times the size of India. Because of waste, we need to put more land in production. So indirectly, food waste is a significant source of deforestation. Now, if we look at a third of the world population, we are talking about 2.6 billion people. It's almost the combined population of China and India, and more than twice the population of Africa. Where else than by solving food waste do we have 33% room for improvement in food and agriculture? It's only a behavioral, an organizational, and an infrastructure investment issue. It's not rocket science. All it takes is money and discipline. Right now, people are gathered at COP26. Unlike what they claim, what is at stake is not the planet, it's the biosphere, which is the soil, the water, the organic matter, the climate, and of course, life. And there is not only one production system. There is a huge diversity of production systems, and they don't pollute equally. There are huge differences between the different regions of the world, even within one particular system. Farmers have different production and environment performances and impacts. We need a targeted approach. The proper way is to look at the different situations and through innovation and knowledge transfer, level up the playing field and help producers improve. We must do more to help farmers succeed. They know the problems, they often know the solutions, but often they lack the needed support. There is a great potential in this field, especially with the introduction of new technologies. Previous periods of modernization of agriculture were about adding muscle. First with animals, then with machinery. It literally and figuratively was about adding horsepower. The current transformation of agriculture is about adding a nervous system and synapses. The drones, the satellites, the robotics, the driverless vehicles, the sensors, artificial intelligence, data collection are all extensions of the farmer's senses and brain, but far beyond human capacity. The principle of precision agriculture is about taking the right action at the right time, at the right place. This actually offers the best of all worlds. It helps producing the highest yields by using the very strict minimum of inputs. It helps reduce the use of fertilizers and pesticides. It helps reduce the amount of energy, therefore reduce greenhouse gases, and it helps reduce the use of water. These technologies go beyond production alone. They also can help monitor the environment and help detect possible impact on the environment immediately. The main issue with implementing new technologies is their cost. New technologies and precision are the ideal tools to address waste, simply because waste and efficiency are two sides of the same coin. When we reduce waste, well, we're more efficient, as we need less input for the same output. It really comes down to producing more with less. In my opinion, there is no reason to sacrifice yield. Not everybody agrees. The US, I think, along the lines of increasing efficiency and producing more to meet future world demand. The EU, with its brand new farm-to-fork policies, seems to prefer to reduce production as the way to reduce greenhouse gases. Personally, I'm surprised by the EU's choice. The EU has a highly efficient agriculture, with some countries being the very top, and its carbon footprint is relatively low compared with many other regions of the world. Indeed, the EU, like all other regions, need to reduce the use of inputs, but in my opinion, the EU's agriculture problem is not so much a carbon footprint one as it is a problem of distribution of productions, in particular, the few areas having too high a density and concentration of intensive animal farms. They mostly need to rebalance animal farming and crops. The reason is, as I mentioned earlier, that the loops have been opened. The future will be about repairing the damage done. We will have to replace the consumption economy, which is about quantitative growth, about always more, by a maintenance economy, which focuses on qualitative growth or on always enough. Closing the loops is about the biosphere, with a financial element on the side. It is about preserving and regenerating soil, water, organic matter, while mitigating climate and by including the externalities. This means changing the economic equation. The economy is a combination of three components: resources, labor, and capital. Next to this economic equation, markets determine prices through supply and demand. The math for both the economic equation and the markets are influenced by policies which set the rules of the game through rewards and penalties. And future choices of the reward and penalty system will strongly influence how agriculture will be organized and how it will perform, because producers will choose what returns them the highest income. The change I expect is the implementation of taxes on some product categories and production systems, mostly because governments need money. To some extent, it will also influence consumers' choices, although consumers are subject to many more stimuli to make their choices. Setting new rules require thinking carefully about how they change externalities and therefore what the long-term consequences will be. It also means looking at the bigger picture. Climate change will affect the food world map. Some regions will not be able to keep producing what they produce today. They will have to choose for different crops and combinations thereof. Other regions will be more suitable to take over. Water availability will be a crucial factor in the future food map. How long can regions that produce and export large volumes of water-rich product to faraway markets from which the water will never return can continue to do so? New strategies are required. It can be the adoption of new and better varieties that can resist drought. It can be the use of different production systems, such as the use of cover crops, the use of mulch and organic matter. It can be the development of plants that use fertilizers more efficiently, or that have higher photosynthesis efficiency. It can be different irrigation systems and to move to a crop-by-drop approach. It also can be production systems that reduce evapotranspiration, for instance, by combining a low-level crop under a cover of trees. It can also be desalination of seawater for irrigation purposes. The list of solutions is long, but the redistribution... Yes? The list of the redistribution of the world food map will have consequences far beyond the field. It will redefine geopolitics. All countries will have to rethink both old and new alliances. Feuds and partnerships combine with new natural conditions, and therefore trade will affect food security. It's also important to realize that food security, food sovereignty, and self-sufficiency are different concepts. It is impossible for all countries to produce everything because of different natural conditions. With more extreme climatic conditions, choices will have to be made. This is why I think that trade will be essential not only for food security, but also to mitigate the effect of climate change. Until now, the economic model has been to produce where it's cheapest to produce. As such, not a bad idea, except that it opened the loops and did not include the externalities. True sustainability means closing the loops and including these externalities. In the future, the concept might evolve to producing where it's the cheapest to produce sustainably. And this word, sustainably, is going to make all the difference. It will affect availability, it will affect costs, and it will affect prices. And as always, when prices increase, it offers opportunities for alternatives and also for resourcefulness. An example is urban farming, and there are all sorts of projects. It's estimated that 20% of all food produced in the world is produced in urban areas. Next to food production, it has also a social function and can help mitigate some of the effects of climate change. The question is often to figure out how to organize urban farming. They can be community gardens. People can also use their balconies to grow food, or old buildings can be transformed into farms. In cities, the roof surface is huge, and roofs can be an ideal location to set a garden. Actually, some supermarkets are already growing perishables such as tomatoes, lettuce, and strawberries on their roofs and sell them day fresh to the consumers visiting their stores. On the consumer end, there is plenty of activity too. Suppliers offer products with green claims, true or not, by the way. There are campaigns of information as well as disinformation about the impact of various food groups. Protein is one of these areas, and the fight to meet the need for protein is on between animal farming and alternatives. But what do consumers want? Well, they want food to be available, they want it to be affordable and safe. There is also a strong demand for natural, although natural is a rather unclear term, and most of the time it means not artificial. They want healthy foods, and the rise of obesity and diabetes reinforces this demand. Because of climate change, consumers have become more discerning, or at least try to be, about which products they consider responsible or which ones they see as harmful for the environment. Production methods will matter more and more, and a good example of this is the growing concern for animal welfare. Another strong trend is authenticity, which is also an unclear term rooted in some nostalgia and often means that it must not be industrial or at least not be perceived as such. Other areas that consumers look for are value and values. Value is not new, but it becomes more complex. It's rooted in perception and psychology, not to say ego and status. Values have become increasingly relevant with the presence of social media. Consumers buy from suppliers that are aligned with their values. They are keen on knowing the food producer's view on their role in society and environment. And for a food producer, this can be tricky. As often, it will take only one word or message that goes against the consumer's values, and they decide to stop buying. Social media have made people extra sensitive and touchy, and bad publicity spreads like fire on social media platforms. This is a new dimension that food producers need to consider very carefully. Social media can make you and can break you in a heartbeat. Transparency is important. Most suppliers see it as providing consumers with every bit of information, but this is a Herculean task, and one can wonder if this is the right approach. Let's face it, only very few consumers want to know everything from beginning to end about the history of the product they buy. Transparency is not so much about information as it is about trust. They want to know enough about the producer to feel confident buying the product. They want to have the assurance that the producer has nothing to hide and will answer honestly all questions. The food producer's business needs to be on display as if it were behind a clear, transparent window where consumers can look at anything they want in complete freedom. Traceability is a cousin of transparency. It's essential to trace the source of a problem should one arise, but it must be much more than that. It must be a proactive tool. Knowing why something went wrong is nice, but it's after the facts. A good traceable quality assurance system is what producers need. This is where new technology, the nervous system, can be useful by allowing a full online in real-time quality control that has the ability to flag any deviation and stop the production line immediately. Having a proactive system that will prevent quality issues to be sent to the customer will spare many frustrations and save lots of money. But Next to better production methods and new technologies, one area that needs to improve in the future is to help people eat better. It should be the moral duty of food producers to take good care of their customers. In this area, we are still in an era of marketing-driven business, which is about having consumers buy more. It will have to change from quantity to quality, and the promise will have to be kept, indeed. An advantage of social media is that it will expose those who make false claims and false promises. Consumer information is going to be another front for suppliers. A system like Nutri-Score is drawing more and more criticism. It seems to have become a marketing tool and is no longer a true nutrition tool. If it does not get fixed, it will lose all credibility and in fact reinforce the feeling that the industry is always trying to deceive consumers. So what segments can be the winner of the future? Well, the points that I've presented before, such as quality, clean, healthy, authentic, will do very well. Foods and recipes that are rooted in nostalgia and tradition have great potential. This is especially true in mature markets that I see evolve into a mosaic of niche quality specialties. Of course, because not everybody is wealthy, there still will be a large market for low-cost, staple foods, sharply priced, but with increased standards about health, environment, and ethics. Over the last few years, perhaps the most disputed battlefield has been protein. Animal farming is being challenged. A lot of investor money flocks to tech protein alternatives. Plant-based imitation meat and seafood have received a lot of publicity. Many claims have been made about their potential. So far, they come short of those claims. The segment has room to grow, but it will not replace animal farming. Performance on the stock markets is poor, and the investors' money is now moving somewhere else. I see better potential for smaller private producers with a low profile, catering to the need of consumers with wholesome products instead of high-tech meat imitations. If the stigma is currently on meat, the next category to be demonized will be ultra-processed foods. Investors have also moved into what used to be called lab meat, a product that still struggles to find its name. Although they make regular claims about readiness to deliver large market quantities and being price competitive, it is still not really clear whether it will happen on a large scale. Other alternative protein sectors include the use of bacteria to produce specific protein. Perhaps it will have some potential for animal feed, but more surely in the medical field. And of course, there are insects. There's been a lot of publicity, but success is slow to materialize. One problem is the price. Just like all the other alternative protein, they are not price competitive with animal products. Producers of insects try to push it in Western countries' market, but this is not the right place. There, people don't want to eat bugs. Westerners like soft and meaty. That's why lobster and shrimp are in demand. They are large aquatic insects, really, but their look doesn't matter because they contain lots of flesh. Crickets don't. It's that simple. I see insects having more potential for animal feed if it can be price competitive. The protein fight is useful. It has put animal farming on the spot and forced producers to find solutions to reduce their environmental impact, and it works. The sector has already come with innovations to reduce its methane emissions, and although there still is a lot of work ahead, the improvements are getting noticed. This is the beauty of the fight between industry and environmentalists. As long as the industry doesn't feel threatened, the initial reaction is always, no, it costs too much. But when the industry sees that it will lose business and it will cost them dearly, they're actually amazingly innovative, fast, and cost-efficient. Perhaps anecdotal is the fact that Bill Gates, who has been an investor in alternative protein and behind the claim that it could replace animal farming in a decade, which is not going to happen, has now invested in a cow milk producer that gets the milk from farms where new technologies are being used to reduce methane emissions. He's pragmatic and is moving on. Others will follow him. As animal products are concerned, all the forecasts for the long term show a further increase in consumption. In particular, poultry is by far the biggest winner. Aquaculture could do very well too if consumer prices become more affordable. You are in an area with great potential for the production of fish, shellfish, crustaceans, and seaweed. To conclude, feeding a population of 10 billion individuals is a huge challenge. It will require changes in the way we produce and in the way we consume. My main concern is that the conversation has become more and more polarized and intolerant. Instead of opposing systems and points of views, we need to listen and think carefully. Nothing is black and white, and there is no one-fit-all solution. There is no silver bullet that will solve the problem so that we don't have to change. Instead, we will solve the problems through a combination of many solutions. Some will be of a technical nature, but technology is only as good as we use it. Technology is not only about high-tech, and innovation is not only about technology. The key is the way we think, and we need to be flexible with thoughts and ideas. Pragmatism will be essential. Whatever works is good, even if it sometimes goes against our prejudice. Remember what Deng Xiaoping said when he changed the course of China 40 years ago. It doesn't matter if the cat is white or black, as long as it catches mice. Our attitude will make all the difference. I expect that we're going to rediscover old wisdom and that many solutions will come from the past, but in a modern jacket, as it is already happening. Money will make a difference too. There is plenty of it around. All it will take is some effort. Succeeding will also require humility and cooperation. Nobody knows everything, and nobody can solve all the problems on their own. Engaging in a positive and constructive dialogue is what will shift the conversation from a sterile win-lose debate into a win-win vision. You can read more about my thoughts and views about the future of food and farming on my website and in my books. I thank you for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful session. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Sayın Christophe Peltier, biz de sizlere çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Değerli izleyenler, tekrar hatırlatmak.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to remind you once again, throughout this session, you can use AEF hashtag and you can send your comments and questions to us.
YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter kanalları üzerinden ve Ege Ekonomik Forum YouTube kanalı üzerinden yazdığınız soru ve yorumlar değerli konuşmacılarımız ve moderatörlerimizle buluşuyor olacak. Soru ve
You'll be having your comments and also your question from the hashtag. Now, I would like to give the floor to the session in which we're going to be talking about what will feed our world transformed with agriculture 12,000 years ago under the moderation of Ali Ekber Yıldırım, the agriculture editor of Dünya newspaper, and Mr. Birol Celip, deputy coordinator chairman of AEA and chairman of Aegean Dried Fruit and Product Export Association, Mr. Dr. Nevzat Birişik, Director General of TAGEM and Güvenlik and Chairman of Board of İzdua, and Nipton Soyer, Chairperson of İzmir Village Co-op Union. Ms. Ebru, thank you very much. Well, this is the 5th year and the 5th session of the Aegean Economic Forum. It's November the 10th. Gazi Mustafa Kemal Atatürk has passed today, and I would like to commemorate him with my deepest respect. Of course, we are going to be talking about today on the subject and how we are going to transform, how the world is going to transform, and how we will feed the world accordingly to this. And of course, we've been talking about climate change and an increasing population and water problems, of course, and drought is an important issue here. Starvation and accession to food is one of the most important cases. And of course, the food prices is also very much important in the last period of time. So we are actually facing an enormous price that we haven't faced before for years in the food prices. So that is the reason why this has become a great problem. And upon that, we also had the coronavirus in the past 2 years. The problems have been multiplied, and that is the case on an agricultural level, of course. Even though there wasn't a decrease of agricultural production, the prices have increased, and the productive countries, the countries that make the production, have taken this at monopoly in hand. That also has created a great problem. There's also the problem of logistics, and also about the freight transportation and carriages. In Germany, there was a fair, for instance, and there we have seen that in that fair that there is a necessity to transform, as Mr. Christoph has said. Exactly. Of course, there's a transformation to technology in one way, but on the other hand, each country is returning back to its essence, to its own core. So that is the reason why a new way of production is going on. For instance, vegan food or frozen food. There is actually a more amount and multi-diversity in food. Each culture, each country, and each history of a country can actually create new types of ways to reach the food. We can talk about these matters for hours and hours, perhaps, but the time that is given to us is about an hour. So that is the reason why maybe we can exceed a little bit of the time, but we have 4 speakers amongst us, and I would like to actually complete the session in an hour and plus maybe 15 minutes if they can actually, if the panelists can kindly make their presentations and answer the questions or that I will convey. I will be very glad. And I would like to give the floor to Ms. Neptune Soyar, chairperson of Izmir Village Coop Union. So, of course, it is very much important that corporations are becoming more prior than before in production, in nutrition, and in small enterprises. In order to overcome starvation around or hunger around the world, can the corporations be an impact on it? Thank you very much. I thought that we were going on an alphabetic list. And now I'm a little bit more excited indeed. I can say yes, thank you very much. Of course, it is the 83rd year of the passing of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, and we commemorate here. And I would like to share my emotional feelings for you. And I also would like to thank each and everybody who has contributed to this session. And I really loved the theme today, because we're going to be talking about how we're going to feed the world. Because in the center, we are in the center, we are putting the people in the core of everything. But now we realize that there is something that we need to think instead of the human being, which is the world. Because in order to go survive, we need to overcome the extinction of the nature. Climate change creates atmospherical changes, and now we realize that we are part of nature and we cannot actually dominate over power. And that's the reason why we need to find out strategies. And 12,000 years ago, we have learned about agriculture, but if we cannot abide by the rules of nature, then I'm sure that nature is going to overcome it. We need to make plannings. We need to smartly consume water, and we need to understand our geography, by the way. From production to consumption, there should be changes to be made. The agricultural productions are very much important in feeding and nutrition, but the consumption of the water, 70% of the consumption of water is made for agriculture, and this is the wrong way to do it. So irrigation is also very much important in order to keep the water resources. The scientists, the governments, the states, and all NGOs and all parties have to work together. We shouldn't only think the problems in our country, in Turkey, for instance. This is in Glasgow. as far as we could actually follow, we realized that the world has to work together and all countries have to work together in that manner. Only this way can we come to a result, a proper result. 100 millions of people who is feeding the world, the farmers, and more than 50% of the global agriculture is all about the producers. So the sovereignty of our food security is made by the people, by the farmers living in these rural areas, small entrepreneurs, and also the farmers. We need to actually also make a solidarity here also for them. And on the other hand, we need to protect all of the people in the farming area. We shouldn't be in competition, but we should be in solidarity. Actually, the humanity is a threat to the world. We are a threat to the world. And that is the reason why we need to protect our biodiversity. We need to save our water, and we need to have a zero carbon emission. And on the other hand, we need to have a food with a higher nutrition, and we need to focus ourselves for better agriculture, sustainable and healthy food. Indeed, we need to make a change in the way of how we are eating. Maybe we should take a look on what we were doing in the past. We need to explore it once again and find it out on how we were actually feeding in the past. We need to see how we consume. There are 10 millions of bread in Turkey is going to waste, is wasted. That means bread means wheat, it means water, it means soil. So that is the reason why the earth is very much important for us. But why we are making agriculture, we should take a look on how we are coherent and in harmony with nature. Hundreds of millions of farmers. And there are also small enterprises. More than 50% of these farmers have to be protected. Their locations, the places that they are living in, has to be protected by the state. In the Izmir Economic Congress that Mustafa Kemal Atatürk has led, was talking about organizing the farmers, and the state should actually help the farmers in that case and support them. And in Izmir, cooperation is still continuing compared to other provinces. The reason why is because of this solidarity. We are still continuing doing this solidarity. As Izmir Kirkup, Mr. Mustafa Bashar in Ödemiş Badem, he's the director of Ödemiş Badem Corporation. He's still the president, the honorary president of our corporation. In the documentary that we have made 2 years ago of Izmir Kirkup, he has been talking about cooperation for 2 or 3 minutes. In the 40s and 50s, he was talking about how the corporations have been initiated and how it has been rooted. And with a short video, I would like to show you what cooperation means, and from his words. Would you?
Kooperatifin amacı nedir? Üreticileri birleştirip birleşen üreticilerin ürettikleri ürünleri kaliteli yetiştirelim. Kaliteli ürünleri piyasaya sürelim. Değerli fiyatlarla alın terinin karşılığını alalım. Bölgemiz çok fakir. Komşu ağalar var 4 tane. Bu ağalara her gün 300, 400, 500 kişi çalışmaya gidiyor. Biz niye bir kooperatif kurmuyoruz? Bir kooperatif kuralım da ekonomik sıkıntılarımızı kooperatif faaliyetiyle çözmeye çalışalım. Ana sözleşmeyi hazırladıktan sonra kooperatif faaliyete geçti 1968'de. 9 kooperatif birleştik. Mahmut Türkmenoğlu'nu başkan yaptık. Ben başkan yardımcılığını verdiler. Mahmut Türkmenoğlu milletvekili olup gittikten sonra ben İzmir Köy Kok Başkanı oldum. İzmir Köy Kok Birliği olarak biz önce ortağımızın ürünü nasıl değerlenecek, nasıl pazarlama yapılacağımız üzerinde çalışmalar yaptık. Kooperatif kurulmazdan önce büyük tüccarların önünde simsarlığa vardı. Üreticiden bu simsarlığı alıyor, büyük tüccarları satıyor. Bu aracı kuruluşlarıyla pazarladığımız ürünleri kooperatif olarak yapmayı başardık. Ortakların ekonomisi güçlendi. Ağaların topraklarını satın almaya gücüne eriştiler. 4 tane ağanın arazilerini olduğu gibi bizim kooperatif ortakları satın aldı. Ağalık düzeni kalktı kooperatifin faaliyetiyle. Hem ailesinin yaşantısı değişti, hem de toplum yapısındaki bireysel güçleri medeniyete ulaştı.
Evet.
Yes,
Köklerimizde
our power is in our roots. We need to remember our own geography. We need to read the heritage that our ancestors have brought us. On 1923, in the Economic Congress, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk was talking about local commodities, and we need to use these local foods and commodities indeed, and Izmir is going to be leading it, and the cooperation here in Izmir are in solidarity without any kind of a competition. They're increasing the productivity with their with the seeds coming from the ancestors is an actually example for the whole world. So by production and by making production, we need to understand, should we put every food to waste, or should we actually really use what we have in our hands in a proper manner? I do not want to take much of your time, but there are a few words that I would like to say. On 1923, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk in the Izmir Economic Congress was talking about the importance of cooperatives, and he was taking attention to local commodities. In Aydın, there is also a province called Aydın, in which there are farmers who have founded Tarish. In the 1960s, Mahmut Türkmenoğlu not only organized Izmir, but also organized all small enterprises in farming as well, so that he showed on how we can become powerful as small enterprises. And here in Izmir, again, we are following what they do. Yes, we can use the technology, of course, we can talk about new things, but on the other hand, we also need to remember the memory of our soul, of our seed, of the earth that we have in our geography. In the last 2 years, of course, the climate change is been actually debated for years and years, but in the last 2 years, we have seen that it entered into our houses. So it is disrupting right now each and every one of us. And that is the reason why the sustainable farming and agriculture in Izmir has to be clearly seen by many of us. It's very obvious. Yes, there are hybrid seeds, and also we know that the hybrid seeds are 2 times more productive. But we, on the other hand, know that the seeds that comes from our ancestors are better, and we know that from experience. And with a little tiny seed, the movement that started in Izmir is now all around the country, and now it's the ancestor seeds have been distributed to the whole country. We can actually secure and save our soil and our water, and by producing more without wasting with our ancestor seeds, we can actually be fed. Cariculture seed has been planted in our own land. If it was a hybrid seed, we knew that we would have a productivity 2 times 4. We didn't irrigate it, we didn't fertilize it, we didn't use drugs, but we made our own bulgur. So we produce as much as we need. We didn't actually use it for ourselves, but also we shared it to everybody in a fair way. I suppose I completed my time for the moment. As we are feeding, of course, we shouldn't disrupt the world. We need to come together. We need to be in solidarity. Thank you very much. Ms. Neptune Soyer, thank you.
And now I'd like to invite Birol Celep. Birol Bey, we live in İzmir region, Aegean region, and Birol Bey is the Deputy Coordinator of Aegean Dried Fruits and Products Exporters Association, and also he is from Aegean Exporters Association. So during this pandemic period, on the exportation and importation, we had big challenges, but as far as I observed, especially in certain agricultural products, certain products that could not be produced by European countries were manufactured in our country and we were exporting them, but there were certain quotas and limitations, and also taxation was imposed to Turkey. Turkey imports with 65% of it comes from Russia, and Russia imposes taxation to us on certain periods. And when we have a look at all these, it's not about self-sufficiency and self-feeding, self-nourishing ourselves. Of course, this is our priority, but on the other side, we make exportation and we attract foreign investment and foreign exchange to our country. So what can you say for supporting exporters from that respect? Thank you very much. Esteemed moderator and also esteemed head of İzmir Chamber of Exchange and esteemed guests. I have many titles and majority of you know about me, I guess. From the farmers till the final consumers, every end consumers from every stage in this spectrum, I have had many experience and I'd like to share this experience with you in this brief period of time. And our previous speakers have mentioned it very well, and Neptune also has explained the situation very well. But we know that the world is getting much more globalized and the climate conditions are changing rapidly. And Ali Ekber Bey is a very important journalist in his topic in Turkey. I'd like to emphasize that he is a very important name. So in this changing world conditions, we have to be strong in the competition and we have to take certain measures and precautions. And in each and every platform, we discuss these topics. So in this very important day, especially at this day, we are commemorating the soul of the founder of Turkey, who is the architect of the modernization of Turkey at the 83rd anniversary year of death of our great leader, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. I'd like to also extend my condolences and I'd like to commemorate his soul once again. And we are going to struggle for his principles altogether with 83 million. And in order for me to answer your questions much more clearly, so if we compare pre-pandemic and post-pandemic commerce, Turkey, especially in agricultural industry, has had huge advantages, and we are experiencing these advantages based on the orders all agricultural product orders, we can say that we are much beyond our production capacity, and we have to be prepared for it. From this industrial production capacity, the most important thing is to utilize our production costs. It must be in line with the changing conditions. Of course, it is not something that could be made on an individual basis or else at the level of corporations. Ministry of Trade and Ministry of Agriculture, and also chambers of commerce, chambers of industries, they should be in line with this target. So in order to provide more appropriate answers, in order to plan my presentation in a better way, rather than saying what we already know, I'd like to mention a few other things. We need to use irrigation better, and we need to have correct plantation planning and basin-oriented agricultural ways, and also rather than polluting the water, using the water again and again, we can reach to our targets. And by producing food with natural fertilizers, we can eliminate harms, and also rehabilitation of the farms and fields must be made in order to protect the reserves. Water treatment must be made. We need the cooperation with the academicians, and also awareness of the farmers must be raised, and renewable energy sources must be much more utilized, and they must be disseminated. These are some of the consequences of the increasing population in the world, and we all know that there is this biggest threat in front of us, which is the climate change. In order to eliminate this climate change, we have to realize the targets of the European Union, which is the neutralization of the carbon emission till 2053. And a Green Deal was already announced by the European Union. For our countries to be focusing on this deal, investments are being prepared as of this moment, and we will all meet with new sanctions in the upcoming years. Rather than entering into EU, all those rules must be adopted into our lives as a lifestyle, actually. It must be deemed as some rules for our lives. So from the producers to the end users, everyone must be actually be informed with respect to the rules of the EU. It's not rather entering into EU, but it's about having those rules as a part of our lifestyles. $212 billion is the export volume of our country, and European Union is the biggest partner for Turkish exportation. 42% of Turkish exportation goes to European Union, and we know that post-pandemic period we can facilitate more exportation from Turkey to Europe. Europe might have more importation, and we can also have higher levels. But there is this prerequisite. We have to be in line with European Green Deal requirements, and we need to make all the production and exportation with respect to the European Green Deal agreement. In order not to have any problems in our exportation to our biggest partner, European Union, and in order to eliminate the effects of climate change for 83 million population in our country, we have to realize all the principles of European Green Deal. And we have already undersigned Paris Agreement, and we have set the target for zero emission level till 2053. For us to reach that level, we need to decrease total greenhouse gas emission by 80%. As of this moment, greenhouse emission is 550 billion tons, and in the upcoming years, we have to take it down the 100 30 million tons levels, and they should also be captured in certain areas so that we will be realizing our target by 2053. For us to reach those targets, we have to be exiting from coal, and our energy needs must be met by renewable energy sources. By the way, you all know that our region is an advantageous place for wind and solar energy. From field to fork, we have all responsibilities, we have tasks, and they should be implemented. If we use water and other scarce resources in the best way, we can support our mission towards 2053. And also, banks should provide credits and loans in more appropriate financial conditions. And we support all sustainability projects. Global Compact Turkey is one of our umbrella institutions. We are the first member to Global Compact Sustainability Scheme, and we have already established sustainability department in Aegean Exporters Union, and all our projects are at the axis of sustainability, and there are some priority topics of sustainability like renewable energy. And Izmir is, I think, a capital for renewable energy implementations, and we are currently conducting many studies about more renewable energy projects. And in the upcoming years, we will be much more focusing on R&D, innovation, and renewable energy investments. And as we all know, there is too much food waste, and greenhouse gas emissions lead to much more food waste, and we are going to be decreasing food waste by 50%. This is something we are attaching greatest importance with the Ministry of Agriculture and with FAO. We have this project called Protect Your Food and Take the Ownership of Your Table. This is something that we are attaching importance under the auspices of the First Lady. And we have many other projects that I'd like to give you some information. And in food sector, we have initiated URGE project. We have 6 different unions. As you all know, Aegean Exporters Unions have 12 unions, affiliated unions. We have 6 affiliated unions, excluding tobacco. Unions are exerting greatest efforts to increase efficiency, like grape, olive oil, chestnut, fruits, and non-wood forest items, and also animal products and spice sectors. Altogether, they are very strong, and on a yearly basis, we have reached 5.5 billion exportation potential as Aegean Exporters Union. In Kınık, we have aromatic herbs. In Bergama, in agricultural and animal sectors, and new agricultural specialty and expertise unions. And thanks to their support, in the midterm, agricultural exportation volume will hit $10 billion. This is what we see as the potential for all of us. And on the agriculture and food, we have decided to carry out education and training series, and sustainability is very much related to packaging and also management of resources in the food, and also transition to low carbon emissions and good practices on the agriculture, digitalization on agriculture, circular economy, and traceability. These are among some of the topics that we are going to be educating our members. And we are also closely working with Aegean University. And in the dried food sector, we have already initiated wastewater projects. We are going to enhance these projects further. $143 billion is the trade volume with the European Union, and in many sectors we are the leading partner of European Union, and carbon expense of our country can rise up to $1.8 billion. So our country is one of the top 10 biggest producers for more than 50 different products, and I think we have to be on the forefront for sustainable production. And for our sectors, we are going to provide financial resources for our sectors so that they could reach sustainable production. It is very critical, and there is a state support, and also we need to have better approaches for clean technologies, and also we need to carry out plantation on the fields so that the carbon cycling on the forest should be balanced. Each and every opportunity for plantation must be definitely evaluated. And by the way, rather than presenting a plaque in our award ceremonies, we are distributing some plant seeds so that there's going to be much more trees all around the world. And against these global challenges, we are working in cooperation with academics, industry, and also government representatives. And we believe that with the participation of youngsters, we can reach better cooperation, and all consumers, all producers are not at the automotive pilot stage. Currently, consumers have high level of sensitivity awareness, especially younger generations. Generation Y up to 50% are very much aware of the situation, and generations that which is going to be the biggest consumers of all the times are knowledgeable about recycled products, and they prefer this kind of products, and they are questioning about environment effects of the use of the products that they use. More than 25% of the planted fields, there's going to be organic agriculture, and 85% of the organic farming comes from our region. As organic farming sector under the European Green Deal and Green Transition, we have already initiated our projects for agriculture auditing and also sustainability. And this is including educational and training related projects. And another project is that under the leadership of the academics from different countries, with the participation of 29 different institutions, we are going to be implementing new projects, and European Green Deal is the main theme for our works. And with this structure, we are going to increase the competence and talents of our members. And we know that there are opportunities to solve the problems affecting many actors, but there is only one condition: it should include the participation of different stakeholders. We need to listen to their views, opinions. This is very crucial. This is the first step to have a better and more inclusive and more prosperous world. In order to cope with global food safety problem, all stakeholders, all parties should be in close cooperation. This is what we believe wholeheartedly, and we need to come up with the solutions of all the possible problems that are awaiting for us. So, participation of the NGOs and PPs and also consumers, this must be facilitated, and we are more than ready to do anything that is asked from us. As Aegean Exporters Union, I'd like to extend my salutations to all of you once again. And if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you very much. I think I've used too much time. I think I've talked too much, but please excuse me for that reason. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Birol. No, actually, you haven't exceeded your time. It's like 17 or 18 minutes or so, but thank you very much for this information. Now I'll give the floor to Güven Eken from İzdoğa AŞ.
Sanırım Neptün Hanım söylemişti. Uzun zamandır aslında iklim değişikliği gündemde ama son 2 yıl
In the last 2 years, climate change has been uttermost.
Well, in the last 2 years, of course, we are getting a little bit more into the issue of climate change. In the past years, of course, we were talking about the icebergs or in the polar areas and the polar bears. We were just watching in the documentaries, but we were not much that much affected so closely. So Mr. Güven is a very important name dealing with nature. And while we are making production of the implementations that you do without harming the nature is the motto that they are following, and about all the climate change, their approach to this matter is highly significant. How to protect the environment and the nature? What should we do within this prospect? We would like to hear more from you about this matter. Thank you very much. And as I would like to thank you very much as for the chairman of the board of İzdoğa. And I would like to talk a little bit about the beginning of everything. We were talking about the agriculture for 12,000 years. Maybe it's more than that. We do not know. This theme is very much important. So it started throughout the past, and I would like to begin from the history to today. The most important failure, the error, the mistake that we have made so far is because that we have made some certain prospects and pragmatic approaches without thinking about what we did in the past. And there is a great amount of a failure. This is a situation that is increasing mistakes and errors in agriculture. So agriculture is actually innovation of a woman. So particularly in the beginning, in these lands, when the agriculture has occurred thousands of years ago in Anatolia, this has developed with the thinking systematic of the woman. So we call this, it is made with the hand of the woman. This is no actually coincidence. Yes, it's true. Because in the beginning, it was done with hands, later on with tools, and then with the technologic devices. But in the background, there is a thinking, systematic. And within the systematic, we are the soil, the water, and the sun is combined all together. It's a kind of a construction. There are different types of trees and plants where the Anatolian women combined together. They have actually really replicated what nature was doing. So what they saw what nature was doing and they put it into the ecosystem. It was an existing ecosystem, but they put the philosophy of agriculture in that matter and they started making production. So briefly, what they did was actually reading and writing nature. This is a great invention. This is a story of understanding and learning about nature in Mesopotamia and in Anatolia. So agriculture and women relation is regarded as the women were actually doing everything, paying effort, and they were really working hard in this field. Yes, they are indeed. They are actually laborers. They are paying effort for this, but they have an archaic information and knowledge about this. In Anatolia, still we have such women, even though the numbers are not much, but today it's still ongoing like this. Every movement, every work they do on the land is like writing on a piece of paper, and they are reading the light, the sun, the water, and the soil. and they are also part of that nature. And in the end of the day, there is some food is produced as a result of this, which is a basic need as humanity. And the basic difference of the past years, agriculture and today's, is not because men were also involved in it. It's not because of that. Of course, men are also part of it. But the basic difference here is that when the women discovered this procedure, there was no ownership at all. It was a collective based on basins. This was not actually a land property. So property was not the case at that period of time. So, for instance, we were using animals in the past, and then we started using different vehicles, of course. This is not a big of a difference, but the most important change here is that in the system that women have discovered was collective and made in the fundamentals of a basin. It is not a property that they are working on, because it was not regarded, the land was not regarded as a property. And in geographies such as ours, they can also change the utilization of the land, like animal husbandry or farming, etc. They are all interrelated with each other. And within the history of people, the property, wars, power became prominent, and land also became a legal issue as well. So seed, water, soil, and sun, and the harmony with people was no longer the case. The people started to actually using the land, have created a land that should be legalized as a property. So, as the patriarchal system occurred, property became more important, and it comes to today. So the climate change has realized in such a way that we totally forgot about the soil. We have forgotten all about the soil, the earth itself. We were not thinking about what that soil was bringing us. It has become an area of occupation. There is no women farming any longer. Yes, there is property, okay, but the way of production is totally contrary to what has been done back in the history. So the important thing here is the input. The small entrepreneur became just a facilitator, perhaps, but then you are involving everything inside, like pumping stations or producers of different fields. Seems likely to be very it seems likely to be that industry, yes, carbon emissions, of course, they have negative impacts, but biodiversity is extincting. And the main reason is agriculture. And it seems very, actually, to us, very naive. It seems likely to be very innocent, but using methane gas and carbon dioxide production is very much created in agriculture, unfortunately, which is actually changing the whole climate in the earth, in the world. Of course, you shouldn't think that we should be. We cannot talk about to return to the Neolithic period of time, but we need to understand about the paradigms. So it's we need to we shouldn't take a look to the matter from a linear way, but from a circular way. Let me give you an example. Okay, there is property. When we take a look to 10,000 years ago, it is not possible to have a new way of approaching to this. But what can we do? We can have cooperatives. Cooperatives is valid all around the world, and in Izmir again we can see the impact of it. I have a farm, for instance. He has a farm. They have a farm. We come all together, and we can use the sources properly, and we can use the soil in an optimum way. And we should plant and produce and eat, export and sell all together. This is the reason why we have cooperatives. Hence the case, if we have a linear way of an approach, doesn't really matter. We can convert into a circular approach as well. Our mayor, Mr. Tunsoy, has said that we need to have a circular ecosystem in Izmir. It should be such an ecosystem that does the producer know what the consumer wants? Does the consumer know what the producer is doing? Does the intermediary knows what to do? When we are going to make exploitation, for instance, we should know what other countries need. For instance, we need to really plan it so the producer approximately knows what they are going to produce. So with how many tons, it is also obvious on how many tons and in what price people are going to buy it. And we also know the ecosystem, the humidity and the light. We know all about it. And we know what fruits, what vegetables can be planted. We have also science for this. All the scientists can actually talk about this and bring it in front of us. We have the products, we have the soil, we have the whole atmosphere we need. But we need to plan it. We need to plan it from the beginning up until the end of that circle. What type of a spending is going to be made? What type of a gain are we expecting for this? And in the end of the end, we need to know what the cooperatives are going to win in the end. So you know how to use the soil, but the cooperatives do not really know what they are going to get in the end of the day. So that is the reason why the circular agricultural mentality has to be adapted to today's structure. And this is actually the problem that we're facing. Right now, we are based on parcels. We are talking about subsidies. We're talking about irrigation. We are talking about electricity, for instance. There are thousands of farms, but they are independent from each other. Think about a country. Let's think that you do not have an electricity network or a wastewater treatment area or whatever. So we are expecting to live in that city. Can you live in such a city? Of course not. So this is the situation of agriculture in Turkey. So every farm has its own unique way of approaching to their farms. They're trying to do it all by themselves. And what we try to say in Izmir is there other way of agriculture. Of course, we need to come together in Izmir. We need to use science and technology and feel strong all together. We need to work in collaboration. There are good outputs as well here. We are not only talking about an increasing pricing or an input, but on the other hand, we think about the planning of the product, because nature gives us some certain products, and you are making the analysis on what is planted best in a certain area, which is also easing the burden of nature on its shoulders. So the Green Deal. In Green Deal, what we want to do is this, to decrease the pressure over irrigation, and as it is done in animal husbandry or methane or carbon dioxide production has to be decreased. Actually, what we expect is very easy. So you have to actually produce products that is abiding by the rules of nature. So in Izmir, in the mosaic in Izmir, has products that are very niche with the best products, and I don't think that you can actually reject it. Well, fig can be produced in Izmir. For instance, in Izmir, we can have also the marsh, the meadow animal husbandry. We have almonds or figs or other products, and typical Mediterranean food gusto is produced in Izmir very easily without consuming water. What do we produce in the Küçükmedes Basin? We have corn. The silage, it is called the silage corn. It's easily been produced there, and silage corn is necessary for also animal husbandry, for goats precisely living there. In Europe, we can the cemental milk can be produced in Izmir, and we can actually export it to Europe. And on the other hand, we have also protected the Küçükmedes Basin. And the milk, the quality of the milk of the cow, for instance, is not really good. We know that maybe we could actually do changes here. On the other hand, it is asked for us to have grapes or pears, almonds, walnuts, and we can actually sell it with a higher price if we want to. But as a result of this, in the agriculture of Izmir, as we are fighting against drought and also poverty in the last years, we have opened up and founded a center under the leadership of our mayor. It is called the Development of the Izmir Agriculture Center. So I invite you, all of you there. We can see here which product can be produced without making a burden over the nature, and what type of a profits that the producer can receive. Not only the planted product, but also the packaging also, and the design of these packages are also been founded in Chile, Izmir. So we are expecting here at 2025, 30 years of a projection in Izmir for farming, for agriculture. Only with long-term projections can we overcome the climate issues. We were in Glasgow last week, and together with our mayor, and we have listened to all of the developments going on there. And our mayor has made also a presentation in the parliament, and also from Brazil there was also a leader who has made a speech. It was unforgettable because whatever we were talking about, Küçükmedes Basin, the parliamentary from Brazil was talking about the same thing that we were saying in Brazil. So you were talking about the ecosystem that they were actually losing the water resources. It means that and beyond the Atlantic, a leader came and talked about the same issues and challenges that we are facing. So throughout the whole summit and all of the speeches and presentations, the main message was agriculture, and that the agriculture should be done accordingly to the geography and also the climate conditions. So you need to actually determine it, and we need to organize small entrepreneurs of farming on a basin scale. This is the only way we can do it. We not with single hands, not with company hands, but if we have corporations, when we adapt ourselves to today's conditions, thinking about 12,000 years ago, then I believe that we can have a better farming and agriculture economy. This is what we try to do with our friends in Izmir. Thank you very much for giving me the word. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't exceed the time.
Teşekkür ederiz. Efendim bu bölümde de Doktor Nevzat Birişik,
And now I would like to give the floor.
Dr. Nevzat, we are so sorry we have waited you so long, but generally the protocol is applied. Normally, public institution representatives are invited at the last part so that they can also answer, reply all the criticism. That's why we have placed you at the last part. So when it comes to nutrition policies, politics, maybe agriculture-related policies were mentioned previously, and there are some critics about planning, for instance. So your institution is the institution which works about R&D and innovation. So we were talking about traditional farming and agriculture. Can we find a way out by harmonizing traditional and new technological farming? Thank you very much. I'd like to extend my salutations to all of you and to all other panelists. I was enjoying really by listening to your presentations, and it's the correct thing. Actually, we need to come up with a solution. So, how are we going to feed the world? How the people living in this earth be fed? Actually, this question has already been on our agenda. As 12,000 years ago, our history maybe started. So as of that date, I think the question has always been asked. In the very beginning, Sun has already shared certain data, but I like to touch upon the history. So in the 9,500 BC, agricultural revolution took place, and up until this day, three important stages have been tackled, and we are at the forefront of the fourth one. So the first one took place BC 9,500 till AC 7,000. So countering the plants and also animals. So maybe the first lines of the agriculture we are having right now were made possible. So domestication of the sheep, for instance, it was made possible back then. And the main argument for that period was about manpower. So the higher the men you had back then, the better your agricultural results would be. So in India, right and left parts of Indus River, and also again in China, again in Mesopotamia between Nile River and also Euphrates. You can also think about the Tigris. So around the regions, agriculture were very much appreciated. And then materialization of the agricultural products followed. So at that period, certain technologies were already used, like using the animals in the agriculture and also plowing, cultivating with the animals. And after that, land power became much more instrumental. The higher land you had, the higher efficiency you would have again. So everybody was again trying to bring more land to their nations or to their groups. And by the way, the emirates, Chinese, Austrian, Hungarian, and Ottomans, every empire back then was settled on agriculture. Till what time? Till the Industrial Revolution, because the UK, the English people, they just reached to different places. Maybe the agriculture was the basis, but after that, their civilization was much more affected and improved by the intensification, the third agricultural revolution. So as of this moment, we are still inside this model. This is industrial or intense agriculture, or it could also be defined as industrial type agriculture. So intensification. So on a certain unit, you are having much more efficiency, and the hard power is the main issue here. This is the devices or the machines power. So it's all dependent on your machine. The better your machines are, the better your efficiency will be. And I guess it was 2011, rural population was started to be decreasing, and the rural population was actually less than urban population in 2012, in 2011. It has always been different, but in 2011, it was on the urban population side, the higher number. So maybe we can talk about right now digitalization. This is the fourth phase of agricultural revolution. This is about digitalization, and with data, with numbers, figures, you can have the smart applications. Maybe this is a new era we are entering into. That's why we are having these change. And Miss Neptune has also underlined similar factors. So is humankind distorting the nature? This is a real question. We are the fifth humanity age. Before us, fourth times, mammoths and dinosaurs, they got extinct and they got destroyed over the earth. Is this the humanity responsible here? But the universe is 15 billion years old and the world is 4.5 billion years old, but humanity is 150,000 years old. So if the world is 92 years old, for instance, humanity is just a 5-month-old baby. So when we were not there, there was this ice ages and the continents were separated from one another. All the living creatures, they got destroyed, and some of them had to go to different geographies. So the land, this earth, had its dynamics. It is independent from our presence. It has always been like that. And of course, we can't ignore our effect. But let's say we are having this agriculture and there is methane gas of animals and it increases the global greenhouse gas. If by the way, when we were not having animal husbandry, the number of the animals were higher in the wildlife. Again, they were ruminants. But of course, I think we should not mix these two together. If there is human, the world is beautiful because no other kind makes shelters to protect other other kinds. Yes, of course, we can talk about too much distortion given by the humankind to the nature, but here there are also positivity. For instance, Mr. Pellier is attending from Canada, and I am from Ankara. You are from Istanbul, Izmir. So this is also civilization made by humankind. So there is not over pressure over nature. And if we are talking about circular economy and zero waste, so at that model, we need to adopt a production model. So what changed that? Actually, the way that we produce agriculture changed everything. Agriculture was following the dynamics of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, people just rushed into Istanbul after Industrial Revolution. Istanbul is 17 million, Tokyo 30 million, Cairo is 30 million. So at this situation, in order to feed all these people living in urban areas, in order to meet over demand, agriculture tries to answer these demands. Agriculture is just the affected party. Agriculture sector, or agriculture, all in all, is not creating these changes. And I'm trying to classify it a bit. So the agricultural revolution, you need to have a land, water, and you need to have agroecology or the appropriate ecology. You need biodiversity and you need agricultural culture. If you don't have just one of these five, that geography can't be a big agricultural community, or else they couldn't find a development fund. For instance, in India, in China, there is very extreme increase of the population. In Middle Eastern countries, there are many cities and religions and art. Everything is related to bringing many things together in a harmonized way. This is what we need today. So if we ask ourselves, with what are we going to feed humanity? We need land, water, biodiversity, and culture of agriculture. But in addition to this, we need two more things. One of them is technology, which is developed by ourselves, and there is also a need for marketing. You are not producing for your own need anymore. 98% of the population was living in rural areas. Everybody would be finding their own food in their own territories. The situation would be definitely different. On one side, Shinsu has given great examples about food demand till 1950s, till 2050s. She said that it's going to increase by 50%, and Christopher Pelikan mentioned until 2080 in many geographies, there is the probability of production in a less production. And on the other side, without pressuring over nature, there is possibility to produce on the local areas. This is not related to agriculture. This is about civilization, I think. When agricultural people are planning this, it is planned with other sectors. So we have to change the urban planning altogether, and personal expectations, the way that we educate ourselves, and industrial production, cultural activities, everything should be changed altogether. So when we say technology, we are also talking about R&D, innovation, and also conservative technologies. So conservation technologies will also be produced. So the technology that we need is related to R&D, and if we have good outputs out of that, it is related to innovation. PAGAM and universities are working on R&D, and private sector should also be involved in the issue, because up to 46% we can only provide innovation and R&D. And Neptune has underlined one thing: it's not always something that we need to produce more. So actually, we are producing food which can nourish 8 billion, 9 billion people in the world. But if you just can't eliminate food waste, there is a very bad picture. And this is the reality. 8.5 million people is hungry, and more than 8 million people die due to hunger. And COVID, we have been fighting against this in the last 2 years, for instance. But each and every year, 25 million people, I'm talking myself, 25 million people die due to hunger. So there is also some hundred thousands of people who are under the risk of dying because of hunger each and every day. And if you are going to develop a marketing philosophy, barriers in front of international agricultural trade should be eliminated, because on one side there is too much production, on the other side of the world there is scarcity. So communication, logistics, international relations are very crucial. So what are the risks in front of us? Biodiversity is decreasing. As an agricultural person, as a manager in the ministry, I don't want to say that this current agricultural system is perfect, everything goes on very smoothly. No, it is not something that I'm going to say. But the agricultural people or the farmers are not the real actors of the situation. Other factors are actually pushing us to do it this way. So there is 5.5 million people living in Ankara, so a lot of facts should bring food to Ankara each and every day. So if people live in residential apartments with very high-rise buildings, so we need milk, but that milk to be brought to these high-rise buildings should be packaged, and for that packages we need corn, maize, etc. So corn, maize, and rice is disseminated to all the world, and also animal husbandry is very much disseminated. So we have to decrease those negative effects. Climate change is, of course, affected by agriculture, but the main guilty side is not agriculture, and humankind is not the guilty part as well. This is something macro-ecological, and this is also a consequence of the ecological production. And I'd like to also emphasize what we can do. We have to protect the water and the land, physically and quality-wise, we have to protect them, and also our diet habits. Our ancestors in Izmir, in Malatya, in Erzurum, Konya, or else in different other places, 100 years ago, they were eating sheep, goats, camels, and they were also mixing barley and wheat and rice. They were eating different alternatives, but all around the world there is the shrinkage of dietary options, and it is triggering monopolistic agriculture, which is distorting ecology. It must change. And our agricultural culture, maybe it's related to property as well. What happens if agriculture is made without property? Will there be any less pressure over the earth or not? I mean, this is something that could be discussed. In the past, there was also properties over agricultural lands, but they were owned by the state rather than a collective production. State owned the lands, and lands were just farmed by some other people. When the Soviet Unions were established, they were handling this issue. After 72 years later, after 73 years, in the biggest geography of the world, even though they were having the most efficient and productive lands of the world, with a very capable of population, with nuclear weapons at their hands, after 72 years, they were waiting, they were hungry, and they couldn't do anything. But on the cooperation, there's this, by the way, another alternative way to agriculture, but again, we are not eliminating property ownership. I don't think that property or ownership is not something that could be given up at this very age. I think the real problem is about the culture that we produce and make agricultural activities, and waste is something else as well. So what is the plan that we are having right now as the agricultural policy and research center? We believe that agriculture is a sector which makes production activities. Your macro politics must be based on strategy. When you set a strategy, you need to be thinking about management of the resources and also your purposes and the consequences. You need to have these principles. And there are some strategic management principles. I'm not going to dwell on the details, but to give you an example, for instance, water management and resource management should also be approached in a very meticulous way, because nothing is limitless, nothing is endless. Things must be based on a basin level, not the district or city levels, because all the agricultural resources are shaped by the basins. It's not about the neighborhood or else village or else town of a certain place, but it's about basins, because basins are the real resources. And when it comes to animal husbandry and the production of the breeding, animal breeding and raising for animals for breeding and some other inputs. So anything that we have as an input must be independent. For instance, in the poultry birds, on the breeding, we are dependent on other countries. But if we can raise Anatolian pea gene, we can get rid of that independence. And for instance, in banana, we are trying to raise our own gene. And in corn, we are dependent on other countries, but in other legumes, we are not independent. We are independent. And today, unfortunately, we are importing tomato seed, for instance. This is related to process management. When it comes to purpose management, certain critical points must be solved. For instance, consolidation, land consolidation. This is something crucial. It should have been already eliminated. Consolidation is the main problem, and also irrigation investment. These are again critical points. If you have water resource at a certain place, you need to have the correct dam design at the correct time, and you also have to provide certain services to increase welfare on the rural areas. And agricultural reforms and other ministries' reforms are very crucial in this respect. And last but not least, there is a macro planning with respect to the results, consequence management or output management. We have to take certain political actions to prevent some problems. For instance, fight against food and mouth disease, or fight against fruit flies. And there could also be some other problems, again, on the marine biology, if there is heavy metal or some other communicable diseases through these animals. You will lose too many things. For that reason, you have to take too much precautions. And I believe in Turkey, we have too much good results. In Turkey, in the society, there is perception. The issues, the products in Turkey are not very healthy, but this is not the reality. There could be adulteration in the product. If you add some other oils and olive oil, of course it is adulteration, but it's not giving total harm to human health. So what do we do in the practical terms? In order to protect biodiversity, we have 32 gene banks. And in 32 gene banks, we have new material, because we know that biodiversity will decrease in the future because of certain reasons, such as climate change. And some of them are in Aegean region. We have olive gene bank and also Africa gene bank, etc. We are keeping the biological wealth of Turkey. And in Bayındır, for instance, if you find this authentic ancestors' seed, you have to protect it. In each and every 10 years, you have to give the seed, and you need to use them in the research system and also the climate system, how to manage it. We have this micro-political document. We say that climate change can create new biological risks and abiotic risks over the production systems. We should be protected against these. We need new structures, new races maybe in the animals. For instance, our local sheep with the Anatolian sheep, they could be coupled, and if we can make them wilder, they could live in forests. And on the forest, we can have higher number of animals, because in the forest there is a biomass, and one way or another it is consumed. And the other thing is to decrease the effects of agriculture over climate exchange. We have PFCF document. Pesticides must be minimized by 50%, but it's not about decreasing pesticides in Turkey by 50%. Biological agents must be increased. For instance, in Izmir, in order to fight against fruit flies, we have produced local traps. So without fertilizers, we can fight against, without pesticides, we can fight against these flies. And we can also get use of bacteria and some other symbiotic living creatures and azotobacterium, and also specific new microbial fertilizers could be used rather than inorganic fertilizer. And in order to reduce carbon emission, this is the key part of that abbreviation, we need a mechanism. Because current machineries are very heavy and they release too much carbon emissions, we need electrical cars and lighter cars that can carry out 3 to 5 different agricultural activities all together at the same time. Nevzat Bey, can you please wrap it up? Yes, I'm wrapping up. I'm going to finalize. And we need to also protect the land. And we have to diversify dietary habits. New products must be harvested, including insects. And agriculture 4.0 in our International Agricultural Training Center, we are going to have Izmir Agricultural Training Center. So in order to give better decisions in agriculture, in order to improve loss and leakage in agriculture, we need to carry out good works, good practices. We have to be managing epidemics on the plant healthy and also the perception of consumers. This is very crucial. So if there is something on an orange peel, our consumers might think this is not a good orange. If there are some bruises on an apple, for instance, consumers don't buy it, and also the sellers don't provide this kind of products, and at the end, farmers are affected. That's the last part I'd like to say this. We need to ask this question to ourselves. In the world, how many people could be fed by the currently produced food? 550 billion ton biomass is available in the world, and 5.5 billion, sorry, I'm correcting, 55 billion, and there is 44.5 billion biomass which has nutritional values. So when we think of a person having 2,000 calories on a daily basis, we can say that we can feed more than 9 billion people. There is too much calculations and detailed calculations for it, but if we can decrease the weight and diversify the products that are consumed, food human nutrition index could be increased, and 200 million hectare unplanted fields, if we also plant them, utilize them for humanity, 12 billion people could be fed. Theoretically, we can calculate this. How can we do this? We can negotiate together, we can find out the correct results, even if it's painful for us. We have to do the right thing. If we can protect the sustainability of the nature, we can succeed in doing our targets. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Nevzat. It's been a very efficient session for all of us, and everyone has already mentioned their opinions about their fields. Of course, we can discuss further. There could be some discrepancies among the opinions of the speakers, but I'd like to thank Aegean Economic Forum for giving us this opportunity, Özgencil Group, again, and all the party sponsors supporting this event, and our spectators, our audience, our speakers. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very good day. And this is the end of the session. Thank you very much. Thank you.
İyi günler.